Hello guys, it's me, Agreedier. It's Agreedier. Today I'm talking about simplicity in Overwatch hero design and why I think that's superior to more complex hero design. That doesn't mean that a character needs to be easy or hard, simply that their kit itself is more simple, right? A good example of this would be someone like Lucio. And the reason I believe it to be Lucio is because I think his kit flows better and it's less rigid, which allows for more room for player expression because there are fewer fixed intended uses of his abilities and they can be applied in unexpected ways, which let players develop unique playstyles. That's why you have styles of Lucio where you have like heal bot Lucios that try to farm beat as quickly as possible, and they're using beat every other fight because they think that's how they want to win. Or you have very aggressive Lucio players that think they want to speed boost their team around and IGL and calm, and you have the ones that want to go for flanks, and then you have the one that go for the environmental playstyle where they're trying to disrupt the backline by booping them but staying alive and not trying to duel as much. There are so many different ways to utilize Lucio and his kit that I think he is perfect in terms of hero design. His balance might not be absolutely perfect, his numbers might be wrong, but the actual overall design of his kit, the way it works, I think is perfect because it's very simple, which means it's very easy to pick up and use, right? Obviously the wall rating isn't super easy and all that stuff. However, none of it is you're not gatekept from any of it. You can be completely new and still to some degree be able to utilize Lucio. However, as you get better at Lucio, you get more options to play Lucio, and then as your wall rating gets better, you might be able to start doing rollout techs. And then as your wall rating gets better, you get better at dueling. And that means you can be a bit more of an aggressive Lucio, or it means you can survive better, right? As you get better at the character, you gain more options to use his kit, because his kit is simple, but it can be used in so many ways. And that's an example of a very simple kit that I think should be really like a cornerstone of Overwatch hero design. And they should be focused on things like Lucio. Another thing is that simpler kits are easy to learn, hard to master, like I said, which means there's a wider there's a wider gap between the skill ceiling and the skill floor, which is better. It means that there's a bigger learning curve. Now, the learning curve doesn't necessarily need to be perfect for a character, but as long as the ceiling and the floor are at least as far away as possible from each other, I think that's the best way to do it, because it means there's always something to learn. For example, there are certain characters in this game where none of them are just super brain dead easy where you just pick them and win. However, the skill ceiling and the skill floor for Mercy is so close together, and really it shouldn't be. The only real way to express your skill on Mercy is your movement and your movement tech, but because of whatever reasons the game decides, they've thought Mercy's movement is too strong, and therefore they've nerfed GA, so it doesn't even really matter how good you are at using your GA, because the cooldown on it is so long that you're not really able to make super good, or like, you're not able to generate a ton of value through your movement alone. So it means even if you are really good at the only part of Mercy that is difficult, you cannot really use it to generate all that much value for whatever reason, right? But like a character like Tracer, the skill ceiling and the skill floor are miles apart. The difference between like a champ Tracer player, like a champ Tracer one trick, and a low GM Tracer one trick is fucking gargantuan. It is immeasurably big because the character can display so much skill. And I think that's better for a game. It also means that there is no like set way to always play the character, right? Because there is always going to be some degree of human error. So it's never the case that one character is so easy to play at the skill ceiling that they are, they're always going to get that consistent value because they are so easy. Tracer is so difficult that there's always going to be a level of human error, no matter how good you are, because of the fact she is so difficult. Unlike some other characters where the human error is less likely to be a factor, especially like heroes where a bit of their kit provides value passively, like an Alari pylon. You can be really shit at Alari or really amazing at Alari, and it's kind of irrelevant because the only skill the pylon has is where you put it. That's literally it, you know what I mean? Right, another thing is they are more consistent performance-wise across multiple maps and modes, right? You take a hero like Widowmaker, because their kit is so rigid, there are very much do's and don'ts of the character. That means that on heroes with a lot of accessible sightlines, with a lot of sightlines that are especially very long, Widowmaker is disgustingly broken. Absolutely game-breakingly good, right? Because that's what their character's good at. But on maps where there are limited sightlines, or the sightlines are shorter, or so on, Widowmaker becomes a character that becomes nearly unplayable on some maps. Now, she is actually so disgustingly overpowered that if you are good enough, you can just play her on any map you want. But I think when it comes to actual hero design, you should not be designing your hero in the sense that on this map, you're fucking vilely overpowered for literally anyone that picks her, and on this map, you're useless unless you're a professional player. I think that is not a very good way to make your hero shooter, because it makes the character so rigid. It means, oh, we're on a sniper map, we're going to be playing Widowmaker. Oh, we're not on a sniper map, we're not going to be playing Widowmaker. I like there to be options. Now, obviously, I hate Widowmaker. I want to remove from the game, but I'm using her as an example because she is so rigid. You could apply this argument to any character that follows a similar premise, and it would be the same. But that's what I mean. So a simple, adaptable kit works in more scenarios instead of being overpowered in one map, but useless in another, right? Basically, that's it. Take a hero like Genji. Now, Genji's obviously got a preference towards wanting to dive. Honestly, he's a poke character at this point, but on dive maps, he is a little bit better because he's got a bit more access to those dive types. But he can brawl, he can have hybrid styles, he can poke, he can do lots of things. I think that's good. I think more characters that can do lots of things are very good. Now, it's okay that they have a specific strength in their kit. That's fine. But it's not okay for their strength to be so overwhelming that it's justification to add arbitrary weaknesses to every other part of their potential playstyles simply because one of them is too strong. The better option would be to nerf the overly strong playstyle and buff the weaker ones. For example, Moira for a long time was a flank bot. You really couldn't do anything else. Her healing output was really not good enough justification to play her on your team, and there was really no reason to pick her other than raw survivability options. So really good Widowmaker players, or really good Moira players, I mean, just became flank bots. They were just perma-flanking all game because it was the best way to play her. And if you had a Moira player that wasn't flanking, she was basically throwing the game because what the fuck else are you doing? You're healing? Well, cool, every support in the game can do that, but Moira's just fucking shit at it. Or you can just go flank on Moira and just eliminate basically half the backline because no one's paying attention, right? That's what I mean. It also reduces like patch ping pong, I guess you could call it. Complex heroes with many layered mechanics often cause balance whiplash. They're either overly nerfed or overly buffed or so on. It's more difficult to find a sweet spot for them because one tiny micro buff to the strong or rigid part of their kit that's got that specific gameplay loop tied to it where there's not a lot of adaptability in it can be the difference between that character becoming disgustingly overpowered and useless, or a very minute change to something that's not related to that part of the gameplay loop might end up amplifying that gameplay loop a lot more because that becomes more accessible or more tangible in that gameplay loop. For example, take like Sojourn Slide, the double slide perk buff the hero into unbelievable levels, whereas before the single slide, although useful, was more of an escape tool. However, with the double slide, it means you're able to play infinitely more aggressively because you have two escape options. If you get dove, you slide out. They redive you, you slide out again, right? It's things like that where because the kit is so rigid, it's so set in stone of what you're supposed to be doing on the character, it means that no matter what minute change you do to the kit, no matter what you're actually targeting, it will impact that strong, rigid part of their kit or their playstyle that forces them to either continue to play in that way or use that part of their kit in a certain way to generate more value, even though the balance change you specifically did not target that rigid part of their kit. Because it is the main influence of their design, it means that no matter what you do, it's gonna hit that character and it's gonna massively fuck over like the different ranks. For example, Sojourn in Gold is useless because no one can hit a broadside of a barn, but in Champion she's just like so stupendously broken. It's just like you can't believe the heroes in the game because all of the power is in the railgun, right? A champ player can hit a railgun, well, let's say like 70% of the railguns are hits, 80% of the railguns are hits, 30 to 40% of those are headshots. Well, you're hitting like, I don't know, quite a few railguns of hit. You might get like 5 headshots of fight in a champ lobby. You might literally sweep the whole team every fight on Sojourn if you're capable of it. What gold player is doing that? Do you know what I mean? It's literally not possible. And that doesn't necessarily make it a bad thing that a gold player isn't able to access that really strong part of the kit. But it is a problem that the only way for them to get value is to get good at the railgun, right? There's no other way to get value. You want value? Get good at railgun. You're not. It doesn't matter if you get good at the left clicks or the ball or the anything else. It doesn't matter. If you're not good at the railgun, you suck, right? Apply that methodology to like Lucio. It wouldn't work. It wouldn't make sense. Do you know what I mean? Oh, either learn to I don't know, go dual Widowmaker, or you're never going to be successful on the hero. That's a fucking shit way to do it. You should be able to generate value through multiple different playstyles and utilizing every part of their kit to get the value that you want, because it should be more about the character or the player, not the character, right? It keeps the power in the player, not in the kit. Complex kits can carry themselves with built-in value. Simpler kits make the player's aim, awareness, and decisions matter even more, right? Because a simpler kit allows for a higher amount of adaptation. Simpler kits allow for more decisions, which means there are more decisions to be made, which means you need superior decision-making skills, such as the right option in the scenario to get the value that you're looking for, instead of a thing like Kiriko, where it's like, do I Suzu my tank, or do I Suzu my DPS? Do I wait for the Queen ult and I Suzu that, or do I Suzu the Yanid? Which one am I going to Suzu, right? Think of the amount of options you have to use Kiriko's kit, right? Where do her abilities tie into themselves? Where is the adaptation in the kit? It's very rigid. What am I going to Suzu? Where am I going to TP? That's 90% of the character outside of like the dueling based style of Kiriko. That is fucking boring in my opinion. That's not interesting because Suzu is a very rigid ability, right? What does it do? Okay, it cleanses you, it heals you, it makes you invincible. Where are the scenarios where I'd want to be applying that? Well, it's good against debuffs, so Nade, Queen, so on, and it's good against basically everything in the game that can potentially kill someone. So, what is the solution to using it? You're either cleansing an anti, or you're saving someone's life. That is the rigidity of the playstyle. That is it. There's a small amount of adaptation where you can use it in the duel to eat an extra shot or to dodge a sleep or something. But that does not justify the other rigidity in the kit because it is so set in stone. And again, like I said, like I'm a big fan of it should be about the player, not about the kit. If you're very good at the kit, you should be able to make it work. But there should be no kit in the game where it just makes it work for you. No hero in this game should work for you. They shouldn't give you value for you. You should earn it. Nothing should be given to you in this game. If you want some value, you should have to go out, be proactive, and get it. Do something for it. Unlike some of the kits where it's like, although you have to do something technically to get the value massively outweighs the either potential negative value for making a mistake using the ability that way, or so on. It just generates more value than you're putting in effort in general, right? Do you know what I mean? It also has less hero fatigue. Heroes with more complex and rigid kits are more likely to have an identical gameplay loop and become boring to play as or against faster. For example, what's a character like, just take like Ashe for example, right? 95% of the time, what is an Ashe doing? They're standing in the middle of the enemy team and on some high ground, and they're shooting you with their gun. That is almost every single game of Ashe you play against, right? Almost every single one. She wants to do the same thing because her design is rigid. It's less rigid than a lot of other characters, but the left clicks are kind of shitty unless you're hitting scope shots before, and scope shots are better at range, so that's an incentive to play at range because you want to utilize your strengths as much as you can. So the more you play at range, the less good the left clicks get, the spam shots. Therefore, the only time you would ever use them is to tag someone that's 1 HP after you scope shot them. You would never close the distance to use the weaker part of the kit, therefore you're always going to play at distance. The more at distance you are, the less player interaction you have. The less player interaction you have, the less decision making you need, and then the less decisions you have, therefore your kit is just stand and shoot people, right? Now obviously, there's aggressive off-angling, there's flanking, there's different ways to play the game and so on. But generally speaking, Ashe's kit is pretty rigid because of the scope shot power and the weakness in the left click spam. If the left click spam was way better and the scope shots were way worse, you'd see Ashe's playing a variety of different playstyles because you would have more options. Would that be better for the game? I don't know. I'm not saying that it would be. I'm saying that you would have more options. I don't know for a fact if it would be good or bad, right? But that's what I mean with hero fatigue. You see a Ramatra, he's going to do block slop. He's going to pop Nemesis for me. He's going to block. That's literally just what he's going to do. That's what his character does. There's just no beating it. That's what's going to happen. There's an Orisa. She's just going to fortify, stare at you, and shoot you to death. There's nothing else that's going to happen. She's not really got a lot of other things her kit can do. That's just what it is. It's rigid, it's boring, and it's fatigue. It's hero fatigue. Because every time you play against a hero, you know what it's going to be. Widowmaker, another one. I know for a fact, if the enemy team have a Widowmaker, I know where they're going to stand 90% of the time. I know who they're going to be shooting at. I know when they're going to be shooting. I know what they're going to be doing 95% of the time. Every single time I run into them. That's boring as shit. That is so boring. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I like consistency. Boring isn't necessarily a bad thing. It should be the fact, though, that the tediousness or the boringness can be circumvented. However, with a Widowmaker, it can't be. And with a lot of other rigid hero designs, it can't be. But, for example, for example, if you take a hero like Genji, Genji can be fucking boring. If he's playing Pokebot Genji, and he's just dash meleeing you when you're low HP, is there a way to deal with that? Yeah, you do. You go chip damage characters, you go spam characters, you just chip his health bar down, make him less likely to do it. Now, is it a full preventative measure? Does it completely neuter the boredom of the playstyle and so on? Absolutely not. But you at least have some kind of option to get rid of the boringness. Do you know what I mean? Unlike on some other characters where their kit is rigid, where their kit needs to kind of be able to output that strength through that part of their kit. You know what I mean? Because they're very rigid. But you know what I mean. Anyway, that's what I'm talking about. I think simpler hero designs are better. I think complex hero designs are not necessarily bad, but they are just worse than simple hero designs. There's many hero designs in this game that are complex, that are interesting, but they're infinitely harder to do, and Blizzard isn't very good at it. So I think you should focus on simpler hero design. I love you all. Have a good day. Eat a cake. Don't eat a cake. It's bad for you. Eat a cake. Maybe eat a cake. If you want to, you have free will. I love you. Goodbye, 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 goodbye. Goodbye, goodbye, goodbye.